I had just sold my company for $43 million and wanted to celebrate with my son and his wife. I reserved a table at the finest restaurant in town. As they stepped away for a slow dance, a security guard leaned in toward me and quietly said, "I saw him slip something into your drink." Without hesitation, I rose from my seat and walked away. 20 minutes later, if you're watching this video, tell me where you're from or what time it is right now. If I make the wrong move today, I'll lose the clean break I worked for, and maybe my life before I ever enjoy it. I told him that while stirring the ice in his glass. Rye, vermouth, cherry, the kind of cocktail a younger man believes makes him an adult. "I'm selling Merceroft," I said, and the oak bar in my living room received the news with more grace than most people. Chris studied the glass as though the answer might be hidden in the liquid. "You're not serious, Dad." His words were sharp enough to cut the air. I set the shaker aside, slid the Manhattan across and kept a glass of water for myself. Age had taught me what late nights do to men who've been around as long as I have. The paperwork was moving, a simple deal, no debts, no loose ends. Laya acted like she was jotting notes on a little pad, the way she always did. Her smile never reached her eyes. "You've built a legacy, Dan. Maybe reconsider." The sweetness in her voice was edged with steel. She had used that tone on me before. "I've thought about it for 3 years," I said. "It's time." Chris began pacing, cutting through the room with his hands as if he could carve an escape from the decision. "What about my position, my future?" He wanted to say our future, but it always came out my. "You'll have severance, momentum, and time," I told him. "You're smart enough to stand on your own if you want to." He took a sip, stalling for time. The glass chimed softly like a small bell. "This is the family business." I kept my face steady, the same way I did through failed products and brutal quarters. "No, it's the business I built to support a family." "That's not the same." Laya's pen moved faster, faster than it ever did when we talked about software. I reached for the folder on the bar, tapping the top page more for myself than them. The numbers lined up in a way that proved a life's work had finally paid off. The offer's straightforward. The buyer knows what he's doing. "Who?" Chris asked. "Kane Systems," I said. I didn't mention how efficient their due diligence was, or how much it impressed me to see my work judged cleanly, professionally, without useless flattery. I've never liked flattery. You can't deploy it to production. My son collapsed into the leather chair by the window, staring out at the skyline like it might flinch first. It didn't. "You're 68, he said, as though it were a charge against me. "You could run this 10 more years." "I could," I replied. "I don't want to." I felt the truth all the way to my bones. My knees agreed. So did the spot in my back that had ached for decades. Silence filled the space between us. I picked up the watch I had bought to celebrate my first million, one I had never worn, and fastened it on. It felt like a ceremony. "I've got a meeting tomorrow to finalize the timeline," I told them. "Let's have dinner afterward and toast to the future." Laya perked up instantly. "Parkview Terrace." "Terrace 8, I said, "where the breeze can reach us." Fast beats might belong to young men, but old men deserve them too. The next afternoon, I stood in a conference room designed to project authority, and I found myself respecting the man across from me. Victor Kane's handshake was strong but not forced. His questions were precise. He understood clean code, and he knew what bad migrations could do to good people. No one needed to posture. We both understood the value. "P43, he said, sliding the term sheet across the table. The number felt like a country you could live in. "Cash," he added, as though that part didn't already turn heads. "It's fair," I said. Neither of us had to pretend it was a gift. We signed the agreements, aligned the transition, and shook hands on the future. My assistant brought champagne. I sipped politely, because that's what you do when others gather to celebrate something that took your whole life to build. When the room emptied, I lingered at the window, watching the late sun gild the city. I felt lighter. I was a man who had finally released the wheel, and found the car could rest at an overlook I'd never let myself visit before. I texted Chris, "It's done. Celebrate tonight." His reply came instantly. "Proud of you, Dad. I'd learned to read tone like I read code comments for what's spoken, what's implied, and what's hidden. But I told myself to take it at face value. A man deserves a hopeful glass once in a while. That night, Parkview Terrace glowed like it was made for moments like these. Lanterns draped across the pergola made maps of light. The city below blurred soft. Chris hugged me beneath the awning, the way sons do in old photos. Laya kissed my cheek, holding on a fraction too long. "You look younger," she said. "Success erases 10 years, I joked. So does sleep." We took the table by the rail. A quartet tuned near the bar, the pianist testing a scale like a secret. The waiter knew me but didn't make a fuss. I ordered wine and an orange juice, because some nights the heart wants fire, others it wants calm. Chris raised his glass. "To you for doing it right." Our glasses rang clean. "We'll travel," I said, surprising myself with the ease of the words. "I want to see trees no one planted. I want to sit on benches no one named." Laya leaned in, her notepad resting like a napkin. "Japan," she suggested. She always had lists of places people like us were meant to visit. 6 weeks, maybe longer, I said. "I hear time runs differently there." The music softened into something dancers understood without thought. Laya touched Chris's arm. "Come on," she whispered. "That one's ours." They rose, and for a moment I saw my son as he had been in a middle school gym waiting for courage. He had it now. I watched them with the quiet joy that comes when love makes people beautiful before your eyes. My juice glass left a ring on the linen. I pushed it aside, reached for the wine. The quartet drifted into a slower piece. Laya's dress shimmered like light. That's when I noticed him. A man in a dark suit standing near the rail. Not staff, not management. His eyes scanned the room with a deliberate awareness you only notice if you've spent years training yourself to. His hands rested in front of him, polite but prepared. He met my gaze just long enough to make sure I saw him. Then he approached my table. "Mr. Mercer?" His voice was low. "Yes?" "Security," he said, tapping a badge near his belt, like a man about to deliver news you don't want. I wouldn't drink from that glass again. There are sentences that change everything. "Why?" the word dragged out of me. "I saw the young man put something in it while you were watching the band," he said. "Calm, steady, small vial, clear cap." My body, hardened by years of red-eye flights, expos and funerals, went utterly still. I glanced at the dance floor, Chris's back to me, his hand at Laya's waist. The quartet struck a chord that sounded like the edge of a cliff. "You're certain?" I asked. I watched his hands, he said. "I'm sorry. I've trained myself not to go pale. Men my age don't get that privilege. You either breathe or you don't. I chose to breathe." "Thank you," I told him. "Call the police?" he asked. "No," I said instantly, then softer. "Not yet." I'd been in enough boardrooms to know the difference between reacting and planning. "If the house is going to burn, you grab the deeds first." He slipped back to his post. I checked my inventory: jacket, wallet, phone, pill bottle with heart meds. Small screw top clean. The glass sat there, sweating, keeping its secret. Under the table, I opened the bottle, slid the glass closer, and poured a measured inch into plastic. The sound was faint but real. The plant beside me was lush, unassuming. I watered it with the rest of the juice, one-handed, like a man fidgeting. The soil drank it quietly. No one notices an old man fuss. By the time Chris and Laya returned to the table, the pill bottle was back in my pocket, and the glass was empty. "We should do this more often," Chris said as he pulled out Laya's chair. His expression carried that glow of satisfaction that once made me proud, before I learned how to read past it. "Beautiful," I said. "You two looked good out there." My voice still sounded like mine, which felt like its own quiet miracle. "Where'd your juice go?" he asked. His eyebrows hardly moved, but I noticed the flicker anyway. "Finished it while you danced," I told him. "Old men get thirsty watching beautiful things." We ate just enough to keep the evening from turning into a performance. Laya suggested dessert. "Another time," I said, rising and placing cash on the tray. "Long day." I kissed her cheek, hugged my son. The world tilted in my arms. I held on half a beat longer than usual before letting go. "I love you both," I said, "because no man should leave a room like this without putting words down that can't be disputed later." "Dad," Chris started. "Stay," I interrupted. "Finish the wine. Dance again." I placed a hand on the rail as though to steady myself, then walked under the string lights like any man leaving dinner. Mr. Riley met me at the entry. "You handled that well," he said softly. "You kept me alive," I answered. If you ever need a reference, you've got one. Want an escort out? He asked. I'll be fine. I took the stairs because my legs needed purpose. The night air had cooled into that clean space between seasons where a man thinks more clearly. Crossing the avenue, I stepped carefully, more so than yesterday. The city seemed louder, or maybe I could finally hear it. From the sidewalk, I called my building. Mercer in 24A, I said. Remove my son from the access list immediately. If he or his wife show up, call me first, then security. No one gets a fob, no exceptions. Yes, Mr. Mercer, the concierge said. He didn't ask why. Men in his position learn fast not to. Back upstairs, I secured every lock, pressing each one until I felt its seat. I emptied the refrigerator of anything already opened, discarding bottles with a grim efficiency I didn't know I'd been saving for this very night. I set the pill bottle under my lamp and stared. Vitamin C plus something else. The glow made it look harmless. Poison often does. I poured 2 fingers of scotch and let it sit while I breathed. The glass and I studied one another. Out my window, the park stretched dark and honest. A man stops naming a city quickly. It becomes only shapes, light and shadow. Once you realize the names in your house don't always match their truths. The phone buzzed. Chris, I answered, because not answering would have spoken louder than I wanted. Where'd you go? He asked, concern nearly convincing. You left in a hurry. Felt off, I said. Home now. Need a doctor? He asked, pushing the word as if testing a sore tooth. We could. I'm fine, I cut in. My tone held steady. Big day, turning in. Okay, he said. Rest up. He didn't say love you. I didn't ask him to. I stayed at the window until the glass cooled my forehead. I thought of my wife back when we had $30 in checking and rent due. That could have made a banker laugh. We got through because we were on the same side of the ledger. Tonight wasn't like that. Tonight I learned my son had chosen the wrong column. I wrote 3 words on a legal pad. Lab, lawyer, locks. Tomorrow would cover the first 2. Tonight belonged to the 3rd. I walked the condo, taking the kind of inventory a man takes only after admitting he isn't immortal. Identities, safes, the file with my secret travel itinerary I had been building as a gift to myself. I slipped it into the safe beside the bottle, photographed the contents and closed it with a click that felt final. Sleep didn't come easy. When it did, it brought a dream sharp as glass. I was walking a path lined with untamed trees, no names, no designs. The wind moved through leaves like applause for someone else. I woke before dawn, older, calm with a list and a reason. That's the most dangerous kind of old man, one who has 43 million reasons to live. Before the sun rose, I called a private lab and an attorney I trusted more than my own mirrors. Then I pressed my forehead to the cool glass. On the street below, a delivery truck idled. A man in a red jacket carried crates like he had endless time. Maybe he does, I thought. So do I. But I've seen how quickly it disappears when you let someone else pour your drink. I dressed in the suit that fit me best, fastened the watch to my wrist. Today meant work again, but clean work, the kind that saves your name, not robs your dinners. I pocketed the plastic bottle. It weighed against my ribs like a verdict not yet given. It felt almost like mercy for myself, the one person I finally understood how to protect. Outside, the morning was bright enough to forgive anything. I locked my door and tested it twice. Old habits and new ones. A day with a list can still be saved. Mine had 3. Lab, lawyer, locks. By noon, I was under white lights that made any corridor feel honest. The private lab's intake clerk had learned not to be surprised by much. I placed a small vial on the counter, labeled at 5 a.m. Orange juice, 1 Oz, Parkview Terrace, 2013. She pulled on gloves without theatrics. I need full chain of custody, I said. Priority processing. We'll handle it, Mr. Mercer, she replied. But machines move slow. I'm paying for human speed, not machine speed, I said, sliding my card over. And I want the shift lead's signature. Her face stayed polite. Men my age are easier to agree with than to argue. 5 minutes later, a chemist appeared. Calm voice, dark eyes, badge I didn't catch. Stainless counters, forms on clipboards. We'll take aliquots, he said. Secure storage until analysis. I can share preliminaries later today. But prelims aren't conclusions. I understand. I want truth, not headlines, I said. As he signed, the weight in my chest eased. Not peace, but its outline enough to trace. I choose lawyers for one reason. They tell me things I don't want to hear in a way I'll still listen. Rachel Hoy fits that exactly. Her office faced the sky, not the city. The right geometry for someone who works in consequences. Start with facts, she said as the door closed. Only what you can prove, not what you feel. I have a security witness, I replied. A tested sample. A son who stared at an empty glass too long. Good, she nodded. Here's the plan. We put fire breaks between you and anything that can spread. Money, access, estate files, legal notifications. Ready to cancel every power of attorney you ever handed over to family. Ready, she pushed a folder my way. First, alert your building and every security contractor of revised protocols. Done. Second, the banking. We'll park liquidity in an attorney escrow while drafting a trust. Temporary today. Today, if the banks allow it. A thin grin. You know how banks cherish slowness. We signed everything signable inside an hour. She moved with the speed of someone who gave up on good timing years ago. At the door, she stopped me with a hand. Daniel, she said flatly, we don't have final answers yet. Stick to facts. Don't ring your son with questions you aren't ready to hear responses to. Speak to him as you would a direct report you haven't dismissed. I can keep a steady voice, I said. I told investors for 25 years everything was under control. That won a real smile. Tell yourself again, banks don't walk or run. They move like glaciers and grind cities the same way. On screen, my private banker looked sympathetic, but her voice rang the old alarms. Policy, compliance, weekend limits. You previously instructed us otherwise. What instruction? I asked. A year ago you authorized that transfers above 5 million require confirmation by a trusted party. Whom? Your son, she said, glancing off camera. Standard practice, Mr. Mercer, in case you're not in good form. So that's what my form was for. Heat rose to my ears. I pressed it back down. My attorney is sending a letter withdrawing that now, I said. In the meantime, prepare a cashier's check for pickup today. Today is challenging, she said. And she vanished from frame, returned. We received a profile change request at 7:30 a.m. from your apartment's IP. I froze it, but the system already notified the trusted party. Good that you froze it, I said. Bad that you notified. Prep the check. When the call ended, Rachel's office quiet was thick as leather. She was already dictating phrases from a fire manual. Immediately revoke, confirm in writing. We'll have a few hours, she said, hanging up. Maybe less. You pick up the check. No unnecessary electronic traces. Agreed. One more thing. I want a safe deposit box for the vial. I'm reserving 2, she said. Different branches. The branch smelled of cold coffee and old promises. The manager held the check like it might bite. I looked at the amount. Big numbers don't impress me when they're on the right side of the dash, but this one looked like a tool you could carve a door with. Sign here and here, she said. Your counsel's notice arrived. We've waived the extra confirmation this time. Going forward only after your profile is updated. It will be updated today, I said. After that, all notices go to me and my counsel. She nodded the way people nod at men who say today in a bank. I slid the check into my inner pocket and felt like a chess player who finally took the queen off a board everyone could see. Now it was my piece, my move, my rules. At the door, my phone buzzed. Unknown number, familiar shape. Message built like a smile for the camera. Dad Liar and I thought we might stop by tonight. Talk. Feels like things are hanging in the air. Love you. Hung at the end like a coat on the wrong hook. I exhaled and didn't reply. Replying is playing to their tempo. I needed mine. Safe deposit boxes seem simple until you hold the keys and realize they remember. Box 1, the vial and document copies. Box 2, copies of revocations. And one very old photo I've carried 30 years. And for the first time decided to store. Not shame, strategy. I'm learning what people betray first. It's rarely money. Escort to your car, Mr. Mercer? The guard asked as I left. No, I said. I'm old, not heavy. Outside, the wind had the right temperature you normally only notice at a cabin, not in a city. Rachel's driver rolled up a modest grey sedan. The car you move thinkers in, not sinners. The lab called, Rachel said on speaker as I got in. Prelims in 20 minutes, go. The chemist's voice was straight as a ruler. We detected a short-acting benzoazepine, he began. Combined with alcohol, strong sedative, and he paused. The car got quieter. Trace Warren. A blood thinner, I said. Yes, in combination with possible cardiac meds. Risky. We aren't drawing conclusions. Full report tonight. But this doesn't look like a prank. I understand, I said. Thank you for the clean read. When the line died, Rachel gripped the wheel like it was someone's throat. This isn't accidental, Daniel, she said. We don't say maybe anymore. Good, I nodded. Next step is notifying the buyer. He needs to know I'm alive and sober. I'll draft it. You go home and remove anything that could become your bottles, she said. And the check, hand it to me. Escrow will be open by 5. The envelope felt heavier passing to her than it had at the branch. Home met me with scents I hadn't named in decades. Thin shadows of coffee, dust, books, and that other thing found in places where people haven't cried in a long time. I opened the windows, turned on lights in every room like I was inspecting a rental. Only I'm the landlord, and tomorrow's version of me is the tenant. I washed and tossed every open bottle, took out the trash with the efficiency you usually reserve for guilt. Then I wrote a smaller list. Lock change today, cameras today, hallway security temporary, concierge instructions, repeat in writing. The screen lit up. Incoming. Chris, I answered because not answering gives away too much. You home? Concern. Custom made. Yes, we'll swing by in 20, need to talk. Not today, I said. I have things to do. What things, Dad? After a day like this, he smiled with his voice. We're worried. Don't be. I held a beat. If you want to talk tomorrow at Rachel's office, she's coordinating. 2 seconds of silence on his end cost more than most speeches. Why you need a lawyer to talk to your own son? He asked. Something real finally seeping in. I need order, I said. Tomorrow at 11, sir. If you don't come, I'll assume you don't need to. I marked meeting possible storm in my calendar and closed the laptop as carefully as a piano lid. The lab's full report arrived that evening. Dry, my favorite seasoning. Warfarin confirmed. Benzo confirmed. Concentrations a prosecutor wouldn't laugh at chain of custody. Immaculate. More signatures than one of my product release sheets. I put copies in both boxes, a third in the safe. The vial went into box 1 beside a flash drive with restaurant camera footage. Courtesy of Mr. Riley after a short conversation and a long look. At 5, Rachel confirmed escrow funded. We both felt the burning bridge at our backs shorten. Now for the legal firebreak, she said. POA revocations are out. Bank notices too. Private security will watch your haul through the week. One more, don't sleep at home. You're afraid for me. I work in probabilities, she said. Today I don't like them. I looked around my living room. No extra objects, no extra people, and still the feeling the walls were listening. Fine, I've got an address not even my itinerary knows, I said in case I ever wanted to disappear from good people. Turns out sometimes you need it for not so good. The hotel I used in long ago conference years has what I like. Nameless respect. Key under a name only I remember. Room without smart tricks. Window to the quiet side. I set down a suitcase that hadn't existed this morning and finally let myself sit on the bed's edge. Phone buzz unknown. If you want to keep your family, stop doing stupid things. Talk at home tonight alone. I read it twice, then forwarded to Rachel. Her reply was sharp. Logged, saved, ignore. Tomorrow 11s. Either way, I set the phone on the nightstand as if it weren't a grenade. Took off the watch, the one I had first worn yesterday. Flipped it over, read the engraving from the first million. Today it looked like a grin from the man I used to be and need to become again. I placed it beside the phone and poured plain water, like a neat signature closing the right letter. That night I dreamed of a corridor, long and white like the lab. At the end, a door marked fire exit. I pushed through and stepped not into stairs, but into woods, unmanicured trees, unapologetic earth, wind talking without captions. I woke before the alarm and knew I didn't want to learn what happens if you linger in the corridor. Morning offered a short clarity. Breakfast without labels, a call to a locksmith. By noon my door would have new hearts. 2 for now. Cameras on the way. Concierge got a second note. This one on Rachel's letterhead. I photographed the lock gear. Not from fear, but habit. Anything important should exist twice. At 10, I stood in her lobby with a thin folder. Everything that persuades better than words. Lab report, custody chain, revocations, escrow confirmations, screenshots. Rachel looked at me like a patient who arrived on time and followed instructions. Will they come? She asked. They will, I said. They need time to settle on a version. Versions are always weaker than truth. Sometimes weaker is useful. She nodded. Good, we aren't holding court today. We're building order. I'll sit in. But you speak. You're the best witness in your own trial. I glanced at my hands. They held the folder the way they once held a steering wheel my first night on the highway. Not tense, but certain. I never expected to be this man at this age, but no one schedules a fire. All right, I said. We begin with facts. They arrived exactly at 11, the way people do when they want to appear respectable. Chris to the right, Leah to the left, notebook open on the table, smile that drained light. Rachel introduced herself and offered coffee. Everyone declined. Good, we weren't trusting that drink today. We're worried about Dad, Chris began, placing his voice on something parental. He walked out of the restaurant without a word. He won't let us in the apartment. We're family. I laid down one sheet, the custody chain, then the second, the lab results, then the third, a bank letter revoking the trusted party. Last night, someone slipped something into my drink, I said evenly. There's a witness. There's video. There are lab results. There's also a clash with my medications that doesn't happen by coincidence. Today I'm doing what anyone rational does, cutting the fire from the trees. Dan. Leah leaned closer. We only meant you've worked too hard. We thought a little rest. I call things by their names, I said. I want to hear what names you use. Chris lifted his eyes. No tears, arithmetic. He's my son, after all. He always calculates. May we see this witness, he asked. Tomorrow, Rachel said, all business. Today is simple. Access to the apartment revoked. Banks separated. Any financial move in his name? Zero communication goes through me. If you want the police, we'll walk with you, but we're not rushing. We're documenting, and we're recording every word. Leah nodded like someone agreeing with the weather. Chris studied me like a problem with new variables. You don't have to do this, he said. I do, I said, because I'm alive. I'd like to remain that way. We sat longer than comfort allowed. Rachel closed the session the way she does when the work is already done. At the door, Chris paused. Dad, he said softly, you know I've always been on your side. I looked at him and felt something stir that wasn't regret or fury. A story I won't tell myself anymore. I know what side you're on, I said. Today I know exactly. They left. The door latched. Rachel exhaled 2 millimeters. The fire brakes are in, she said. Next comes wires and wheels tomorrow. I said, today I want to walk. Where trees don't wear plaques, I said. I need to remind myself why this matters. I took my coat, the slim folder, and for the first time in years didn't feel like I was fleeing. I was simply keeping the fire from crossing the road. By morning, the city had the rinsed look of dishes left to dry. I took it as permission. Today wasn't for polish. Today was for plumbing, for the pipes beneath the floor that decide what runs where when the upstairs burns. Rachel met me with a stack of paper thick enough to block a door. Sequence matters, she said. We wire first, then we write. Move the current before we redirect the river. I brought the folder, I said. You brought your spine, she answered, which is the kind of praise I take from her. The escrow sat there like a silent lake. The sale proceeds, waiting for instructions that would redraw every shoreline in my life. Rachel had arranged a call that started with 3 people and ended with 6 because money calls witnesses. My task was simple. Say yes to numbers and no to doubt. The funds will go into a segregated account titled To Counsel ITA, the bodiless banker said. From there, we'll execute wires per your attorney's written instructions. Good, I said. We split into 2 trenches, one to a fresh trust account, one to a charitable vehicle we're forming today. Name of the charity, he asked. The Astor Foundation, I said, watching Rachel's eyes lift. My wife planted one behind every apartment we ever left. She said the flowers forgave the season by blooming at its close. Understood, the banker said, understanding nothing which is his craft. We'll require governance documents, EN and beneficiary lists upon receipt. You'll have what you need, Rachel said. For now, note the wires and stand by. Stand by. Money obeys that phrase. It can crouch still as a cat until you point to the door. When the call ended, Rachel slid a different bundle across the table. The trust, she said, revocable now, with teeth you can grow. I don't want it to be punitive, I said. Good, she replied. This isn't a weapon. It's insulation. Independent trustee distributions for health, education, maintenance, support. You can appoint an investment advisor if you want control without reach. Independent trustee, I repeated. Not family. Not family, she said, and the word felt like a new kind of grief. We worked in a rhythm that felt like a sterile operating room. She spoke, I initialed, she clarified, I signed. The clauses resolved to a single sentence. The fortune would outlast my worst day and my son's. I could accept that. Midway, the current flickered. Not in the lights, but in the plan. A junior associate hurried in with a folder, wearing the careful panic of someone who knows noise from news. Apologies, he said to Rachel. We pulled beneficiary designations on all accounts. 3 retirement plans list your son as primary, Laya as contingent. 2 brokerage accounts list POD to him as well. Those skip the will. I studied the list and saw my own signatures from 15 years ago. Back then, the forms felt like kindness. Back then, the future looked like family dinners we'd always make. Rachel laid the papers between us like a third voice. These designations sit outside any will or trust, she said. They're a river that ignores the dam. We can revise them, but not retroactively. If something had happened to you last night. She didn't finish. She's kind enough to let a man hear his own echo. Change them, I said. I read it twice, then forwarded to Rachel. Her reply was sharp. Logged, saved, ignore. Tomorrow 11s. Either way, I set the phone on the nightstand as if it weren't a grenade. Took off the watch, the one I had first worn yesterday. Flipped it over, read the engraving from the first million. Today it looked like a grin from the man I used to be and need to become again. I placed it beside the phone and poured plain water, like a neat signature closing the right letter. That night I dreamed of a corridor, long and white like the lab. At the end, a door marked fire exit. I pushed through and stepped not into stairs, but into woods, unmanicured trees, unapologetic earth, wind talking without captions. I woke before the alarm and knew I didn't want to learn what happens if you linger in the corridor. Morning offered a short clarity. Breakfast without labels, a call to a locksmith. By noon, my door would have new hearts. 2 for now. Cameras on the way. Concierge got a second note. This one on Rachel's letterhead. I photographed the lock gear. Not from fear, but habit. Anything important should exist twice. At 10, I stood in her lobby with a thin folder. Everything that persuades better than words. Lab report, custody chain, revocations, escrow confirmations, screenshots. Rachel looked at me like a patient who arrived on time and followed instructions. Will they come? She asked. They will, I said. They need time to settle on a version. Versions are always weaker than truth. Sometimes weaker is useful. She nodded. Good, we aren't holding court today. We're building order. I'll sit in. But you speak. You're the best witness in your own trial. I glanced at my hands. They held the folder the way they once held a steering wheel my first night on the highway. Not tense, but certain. I never expected to be this man at this age, but no one schedules a fire. All right, I said. We begin with facts. They arrived exactly at 11, the way people do when they want to appear respectable. Chris to the right, Laya to the left, notebook open on the table, smile that drained light. Rachel introduced herself and offered coffee. Everyone declined. Good, we weren't trusting that drink today. We're worried about Dad, Chris began, placing his voice on something parental. He walked out of the restaurant without a word. He won't let us in the apartment. We're family. I laid down one sheet, the custody chain, then the second, the lab results, then the third, a bank letter revoking the trusted party. Last night, someone slipped something into my drink, I said evenly. There's a witness. There's video. There are lab results. There's also a clash with my medications that doesn't happen by coincidence. Today I'm doing what anyone rational does, cutting the fire from the trees. Dan. Laya leaned closer. We only meant you've worked too hard. We thought a little rest. I call things by their names, I said. I want to hear what names you use. Chris lifted his eyes. No tears, arithmetic. He's my son, after all. He always calculates. May we see this witness, he asked. Tomorrow, Rachel said, all business. Today is simple. Access to the apartment revoked. Banks separated. Any financial move in his name? Zero communication goes through me. If you want the police, we'll walk with you, but we're not rushing. We're documenting, and we're recording every word. Laya nodded like someone agreeing with the weather. Chris studied me like a problem with new variables. You don't have to do this, he said. I do, I said. because I'm alive. I'd like to remain that way. We sat longer than comfort allowed. Rachel closed the session the way she does when the work is already done. At the door, Chris paused. "Dad," he said softly, "you know I've always been on your side." I looked at him and felt something stir that wasn't regret or fury. A story I won't tell myself anymore. "I know what side you're on," I said. "Today I know exactly." They left. The door latched. Rachel exhaled 2 millimeters. "The fire brakes are in," she said. "Next comes wires and wheels tomorrow." I said, "Today I want to walk." "Where?" "Where trees don't wear plaques," I said. I need to remind myself why this matters. I took my coat, the slim folder, and for the first time in years didn't feel like I was fleeing. I was simply keeping the fire from crossing the road. By morning, the city had the rinsed look of dishes left to dry. I took it as permission. Today wasn't for polish. Today was for plumbing, for the pipes beneath the floor that decide what runs where when the upstairs burns. Rachel met me with a stack of paper thick enough to block a door. "Sequence matters," she said. "We wire first, then we write. Move the current before we redirect the river." I brought the folder, I said. "You brought your spine," she answered, which is the kind of praise I take from her. The escrow sat there like a silent lake. The sale proceeds, waiting for instructions that would redraw every shoreline in my life. Rachel had arranged a call that started with 3 people and ended with 6 because money calls witnesses. My task was simple. Say yes to numbers and no to doubt. The funds will go into a segregated account titled "To Counsel ITA," the bodiless banker said. "From there, we'll execute wires per your attorney's written instructions." "Good," I said. We split into 2 trenches, one to a fresh trust account, one to a charitable vehicle we're forming today. "Name of the charity?" he asked. "The Astor Foundation," I said, watching Rachel's eyes lift. "My wife planted one behind every apartment we ever left. She said the flowers forgave the season by blooming at its close." "Understood," the banker said, understanding nothing, which is his craft. "We'll require governance documents, EN and beneficiary lists upon receipt." "You'll have what you need," Rachel said. "For now, note the wires and stand by." Stand by. Money obeys that phrase. It can crouch still as a cat until you point to the door. When the call ended, Rachel slid a different bundle across the table. "The trust," she said. "Revocable now, with teeth you can grow." "I don't want it to be punitive," I said. "Good," she replied. "This isn't a weapon. It's insulation. Independent trustee, distributions for health, education, maintenance, support. You can appoint an investment advisor if you want control without reach." "Independent trustee," I repeated. "Not family." "Not family," she said, and the word felt like a new kind of grief. We worked in a rhythm that felt like a sterile operating room. She spoke, I initialed, she clarified, I signed. The clauses resolved to a single sentence. The fortune would outlast my worst day and my son's. I could accept that. Midway, the current flickered. Not in the lights, but in the plan. A junior associate hurried in with a folder, wearing the careful panic of someone who knows noise from news. "Apologies," he said to Rachel. "We pulled beneficiary designations on all accounts. 3 retirement plans list your son as primary, Laya as contingent. 2 brokerage accounts list POD to him as well. Those skip the will." I studied the list and saw my own signatures from 15 years ago. Back then, the forms felt like kindness. Back then, the future looked like family dinners we'd always make. Rachel laid the papers between us like a third voice. "These designations sit outside any will or trust," she said. "They're a river that ignores the dam. We can revise them, but not retroactively. If something had happened to you last night..." She didn't finish. "She's kind enough to let a man hear his own echo." "Change them," I said. Not an explanation, a dear map. Something he could unfold one day, if he ever decided to live as a different man. "Write it," Rachel said. "Bring it tomorrow. We'll file it with the trust. It won't carry legal weight, but hearts don't care about statutes." I nodded. The office had that lingering warmth a theater keeps once the crowd is gone. Work complete. Air still heavy with breath and dust hanging mid-air. I chose to walk instead of taking a ride, wanting my steps to prove something to the pavement. 2 blocks stretched into 10. The night sharpened as I moved. My mind wandered to the first time my wife and I bought a tree together, a scrawny sapling from a street vendor, roots wrapped in burlap, leaves dulled with city dust. We hauled it up 3 flights, settled it in a borrowed pot. That tree outlasted the lease. At the anonymous hotel, I wrote in pen. The letter didn't point fingers, didn't cast heroes. It spoke in nouns that carried weight, verbs that carried decisions. It admitted where pride had made me careless. It named the foundation, the trust, and a bench without inscription. The last line surprised me. You can still build something with me, just not out of me. I sealed it, wrote his name, his actual name, not son. Names are for grown men, not roles. Sleep came early, restless, colored by the taste of ink and the echo of stamps pressing paper. Somewhere wires moved money at my command. Somewhere else, paper stopped moving because I told it to. I lay still, counting breaths like counting seconds after lightning, waiting for thunder to mark how far the storm had gone. Not gone, just farther. Sometimes distance is victory. Before sunrise, I dialed the foundation's number, listened to a recorded voice recite hours and a polite promise of returned calls. I left one anyway. This is Daniel Mercer. I'm calling about a beginning. I hung up, stared at plaster until it became sky if you tilted your head. If you listened just right, you could imagine trees where none stood. Tomorrow would bring more signatures, more modest dignities. Tomorrow I'd hand Rachel the letter and a draft list of grants I wanted tested. A pantry I walked by weekly. A program that placed laptops in hands that could climb with them. A group planting trees along an unglamorous strip of road no one photographs. Tomorrow maybe I'd face my son and attempt honesty without sweetener. Tonight I held a trust with teeth, a foundation named for meaning known to only 3 people, one already gone, and wires humming below me, keeping the flood at bay. Not peace, but plumbing. And when I turned the handle, what flowed was clean. I returned to Parkview Terrace near sunset, that forgiving hour when cities soften their own edges. Mr. Riley spotted me instantly, the way his trade teaches men to recognize trouble before it wears a name. Back already, Mr. Mercer. Back with intent, I said. Same table by the rail if it's open. And thank you again. He nodded lightly, refusing to let the gratitude land too heavy. We've kept the footage on a drive. Chain of custody paperwork is ready if required. Been done. I may need only your word and your name, I replied, but it's good the rest exists. He seated me by the rail. Lanterns mapped the air, a quartet tuned in question marks. So I ordered water. I set 2 envelopes on the table, thick with choice, A and B. I've never liked theatre, but truth sometimes needs a stage. At 7:02 sharp, Chris and Leia arrived as if punctuality had been rehearsed. His face wore contrition edged with calculation. Hers? A smile that promised repair for what she had quietly fractured. Dad, Chris said, leaning in for a hug he didn't commit to. This is we appreciate the invite. It's a meeting, I said. Sit. They sat. Leia placed a neat notebook by her glass, pen poised to rewrite history. I chose this room so no one could claim voices were raised, I said. The place prefers chords to shouting. Leia found a laugh delicate enough not to disturb the tableware. We all want the same thing, Dan. That's the evening's first disagreement, I answered. The waiter approached, grateful for conversation menus could fix. I ordered food plain enough it couldn't be poisoned by design. They ordered wine. I didn't. Before we begin, Leia said, I need to explain last night. You left abruptly. Stress has weighed on you. We worried about your heart. Chris slipped a few drops of a sleep aid into your juice. Over the counter. Clumsy, yes, but meant kindly. She had rehearsed it well. The words landed soft, the way lies tucked their knees before hitting ground. I laid a slim folder on the table, square with the grain. The lab found a fast-acting benzodiazepine, I said. And warfarin. Neither belongs in my home. Neither enters my body by choice. Combined with my medication, warfarin isn't a sleep aid. It's a wager. Chris's jaw moved once, a machine struggling to start. Who discusses warfarin over dinner? He forced a smile. You read something online, Dad. Not online, I said. A lab report. Chain of custody. Signatures, it would stand in court. It certainly stands in a restaurant. He stared at the folder but didn't touch it. Leia reached toward it like adjusting a thermostat. Stop, I said. You don't handle my proof. The quartet drifted into a standard, the kind of song a room prefers when pretending not to hear. Chris leaned back as though distance made him taller. We thought of a solution, he said. We brought help. He gestured. A woman rose from a nearby table. notebook in hand, posture polished with authority. "Mr. Mercer," she said, "I'm a geriatric care manager. Your family invited me to consult. Concerns about memory, paranoia, overreaction, just to begin a dialogue. By then, they'd rearranged the furniture mid-scene. My dinner had been turned into an intervention." "Not tonight," I said. She opened her mouth, confident the door would swing. "Sometimes a neutral assessment. Not tonight," I repeated. Then I turned toward the rail. Mr. Riley. He arrived as if cued, though only by his own experience. Hands folded, voice tuned perfectly for a room that enjoyed hearing itself. "These people suggest I imagined something," I said. "Would you tell us what you saw?" He didn't look at Chris, he looked at me, then the table. "Neutral, like a scale. I watched the young man tip liquid from a vial into your glass while your attention was on the band," Mr. Riley said. "I told you immediately. We saved the footage and gave you a copy as you asked." "And would you repeat that if law enforcement asked?" I said. "Yes." Laya inhaled like someone bracing for icy water. Chris's smile collapsed. For a flicker, I saw the boy who once dismantled remote controls to learn how volume appeared. "You're making a scene," Chris whispered. "I'm describing one," I answered. "You staged it." The care manager stared down at her notebook and realized it had nothing left to record. "I wasn't trying to hurt you," Chris muttered, the kind of line people use when they can't bring themselves to name what they intended. "I know exactly what you were trying," I said. "You wanted me dulled, compliant. A signature here, a trusted name there. A version of me too fogged to refuse." "I refuse." Laya shifted nothing, called it grace. "Then why this dinner?" she asked. "The terms," I said, sliding 2 envelopes toward the linen's edge. "A or BA is policed today. I file a criminal complaint with the evidence in hand. Lab results, witness, video. You hire counsel and attempt to argue whether your felony was a prank." The music in the room slipped into a minor key, courteous but firm. "And B?" Chris asked, his throat taut. "B is boundaries," I said. "You put in writing your acceptance of what's already in motion. You acknowledge the revocations, the locks. You agree to never ask me directly for money again. Any distributions will pass through an independent trustee, under conditions you don't control." "That's punishment," Laya said. "That's governance," I corrected. "And with B comes one more clause, therapy. Both of you, not the kind that prescribes for other people. You pick from a list my counsel approves. You attend for a year." Chris attempted a laugh, but it cracked. "A year of homework? You enjoy homework?" "You've been giving me the same assignment for 10 years, I said. He looked at Laya the way gamblers glance at exits. She didn't move. The care manager had already tallied her math and returned to her table, dignity intact, invoice assured. "And what's in it for us?" Laya asked. "Time," I said. "You stay off the record for now. And, Chris, you get a letter I wrote. Not apology, not sermon. A map if you want one." I tapped envelope B. "It's inside." "And if we take A?" Chris asked. "Then you receive a different kind of time," I said. "Measured in arraignments." The waiter placed plates none of us deserved, hovered, withdrew. The world kept serving others. Good. Chris lifted the A envelope, weighed it, and dropped it like a grenade he wanted credit for not holding. Then he picked up B, startled by its gravity. "I want to see the video," he said, his last bluff. "You will," I said. "In a room with my attorney tomorrow, 9 a.m. "And if we don't show?" Laya asked. "Then at 10 my counsel delivers A to the right desk," I said. "I'll be in the park." Her lips curved almost into a smile. "Which park?" "The one without plaques." The quartet's melody brushed a wall, like light changing direction. The restaurant didn't care who I was. That was helpful. Chris let out a breath he'd been hoarding. "You're really going through with this?" "I already have," I said. "Tonight I'm simply informing you." He turned toward Mr. Riley, still present, because men like him don't leave until the story they witnessed reaches its close. "You could have come to me," Chris said to him, misplacing his anger. "You didn't have to shame us." "I came to the one whose glass was tampered with," Riley said. "That was my duty." "You see," Laya murmured to me, pivoting toward regret like a dancer wanting credit for halting, "we've both handled this badly." "Wrong," I said. "You handled it. I survived it." I speared a small bite from the plate, because food was there and because decisions shouldn't taste only of metal. "You've got until 8 to choose an envelope," I said, checking my watch. "After that, whatever's left goes to my attorney. Eat if you want. My bill is settled." Chris folded his hands like prayer and found no words. Laya studied me the way one studies a locked door they resent for existing. "May I ask something?" she said finally. "Why here?" "Because this place told the truth last night," I said. "I wanted it to hear me answer." I rose. "Mr. Riley, your staff kept me alive. I'd like to thank them properly." He began to wave it off. I left a gratuity the size of an apology to the universe for being slow to see. His eyes didn't widen. Professionals don't let money bend their pupils. "Sir," he said instead, "if you ever need a reference, you have mine." "I know," I replied. I looked at my son. He looked older than yesterday, a truth that should never exist for either of us. "You can still build something with me," I said. "Just not out of me." It landed between us exactly as I'd written it the night before. True and not enough. Like most good lines, I left them with music, with envelopes, with a decision that always belongs to the younger. Outside, the air carried the right temperature for distance. I walked 3 blocks naming nothing. Let the silence behave as silence does when starved. It turned into fear. At the corner, my phone buzzed. A message from Rachel, standing by. "Do you need me?" I typed back, "No, they have the terms." Seconds later, "Proud of the plumbing?" That drew a smile. I cut across a square where trees had been planted too close and then forgotten. A lucky accident. Their leaves made a canopy for strangers. No plaques, just shade. I sat on an unmarked bench, let the day parade by without me. At 8:07, a message from Chris. B. Another followed. "We'll be there at 9. I studied the texts and understood. Decisions don't fix people. They only hand them the chance to meet themselves later. Received. Come alone." I typed back. A moment later, another ping, from the number I'd labeled as Laya. "Will there be forgiveness?" "After honesty," I replied. "Not before." The typing bubble surfaced, wavered, vanished. The world is filled with unfinished sentences. I pocketed the phone, leaned back. A man in a suit on a nameless bench listening to traffic in no one's key. Behind me, a restaurant dimmed its lights. Ahead, a morning waited with cables and paper. And finally, a room where truth had chairs. I rose, took the long way to the hotel. The night cooled another degree. My steps felt declarative instead of questioning. In the room, I placed the watch, the letter, and a pen on the nightstand. I poured water, let it stay water. I switched off the lamp and allowed the darkness to remain dark. Not emptiness, but a shade. I hadn't triumphed, I hadn't failed. I had set fire in a place with sprinklers. Sometimes that's the only version of mercy you can deliver. The hotel room stayed intact like lungs holding air. On the nightstand, I placed the watch, the pen, and the letter to my son between them, like a short bridge. I told myself to rest. My body whispered, "You go first." At 12:41 a.m., the screen lit with the concierge's number from my building, the one I wasn't in. "Mr. Mercer, apologies," his voice precise. "2 individuals here with a locksmith, claiming urgent maintenance. Our system flagged the order, none exists. Your security is confronting them now. Do you want police called?" "Call," I said. The hallway feed loaded on my phone with a pause, then my doorway filled the screen. Fresh bolts visible, painter's tape still dangling. Chris stood there in the jacket he wears when he wants authority. "Laya with sunglasses at night," always her signal. A third man unrolled tools, the jaw of a small metallic animal. "No clearance," my guard said evenly, blocking the kit. "Work requires orders." "He's elderly," Laya pressed, voice pretending statute. "We're concerned." "I'm hired by the elderly in question," the guard returned. Chris's eyes flicked at the lens, then away. He always avoided staring at power. The locksmith lifted his hand slightly, an expert showing he knew which side of a lock earned his wages. "Packed up slow for dignity." Laya hissed something. Chris stayed silent. When building staff escorted them off, Chris wore stiff politeness. Laya stabbed the elevator button like it owed her. "Thank you," I told the concierge. "We'll sweep the floor, sir," he replied. "That won't calm the wind," I said. He didn't ask me to explain. I lay back, ceiling above me, trying to pose as a sky. Across town, The locks I'd bought did their simple, necessary job without poetry. I should have felt secure. Instead, I felt old. Not the same thing. At 1:27, a text arrived from a number pretending to be nobody. If you insist on ugliness, we'll petition for guardianship. You're unfit. Paperwork is easy. Judges are tired. Choose peace. Interesting. The terms chosen when people want to politely erase your life. Peace. Security. I forwarded the message to Rachel with timestamp and sender. Her reply came quicker than breath. Logged. Keep phone on. You're not alone. At 2:03, another buzz. A courier service this time, attachment titled Incident Report PDF. I opened it. A complaint disguised as concern, reeking of accelerant, delusions, paranoia, substance abuse, financial manipulation. Pros pretending neutral while laying your bones for firewood. I saved it. Evidence is beautiful even when it's hideous. I went to the window and counted traffic lights glowing under fog. Tiny red planets waiting to turn green. Somewhere below, a truck exhaled its brakes. I pressed palms to glass. Honest cold. I called Rachel's emergency number. She answered before the second ring. You won't like the timestamp, I said. I don't like or dislike timestamps, she replied. I use them. They tried my door with a locksmith, recorded. Good. That folds neatly with our lab files, video, and texts. If they rush to file ex parte by morning, I'll be in a judge's inbox before their clerk drinks coffee. Do judges drink coffee? They drink schedules and despise spills. Leave the rest with me. And Rachel, yes? Don't open any doors. I promised nothing, but wedged a chair against my hotel door anyway. Not to stop anyone, but to remind myself which way I wanted night to go. At 3:01 a.m. a knock came. 2 precise taps. The rhythm of professionals asking permission to enter liability. Who is it? I asked, still seated. Front desk, a voice answered. 2 visitors requesting you by name. My name isn't on this room, I said. That's what makes this interesting, the voice replied, less hotel, more human. They're persistent. Tell them the guest declined. If they insist, give them a seat under the lobby camera. I'll make time at 9, not 3. Pause. Clark approved of boundaries. Understood. Silence returned. The heavy, kind audience's mistake for peace after the curtain falls. I inhaled it until another knock came. Closer, personal, carpet-swallowing steps. I lifted the peephole cover. Chris alone. Dad, please, he said, voice low. We need to talk off the record. Every father wants to believe the word please when it's flown like a small white flag. I rerouted that instinct into a safer current, the one powering the locks that keep their promises. Say it through the door, I told him. He glanced toward the hallway camera. Really, really? He looked like a boy forced to apologize through a classroom window. Then he shoved his hands into his pockets and raised his voice just enough for the microphone to do its job. This is spiraling, he said. You're inflating it beyond what it was. It was war, I answered. It was already huge when you lifted that vial. He shut his eyes for a beat. I didn't. He cut himself off. Wise men get wrecked finishing certain lines. You texted B, I reminded him. That meant you accepted the terms. Showing up at 3 a.m. to renegotiate? That's reckless. You'll ruin your own deal, he pressed, switching to the lever he thought might bite. Investors hate drama. Founders need to look steady. Continuity of leadership. One rumor, and your 43 looks like 38 to the market. You think Victor gambles on that? I know how sentences like that are built. They cost sweat. I've built them myself. He's been rehearsing that since dinner, I thought. Victor doesn't buy whispers, I said. He buys working code and clean books. He knows the difference between gossip and numbers. There are other whispers, Chris pushed. About you. The cardiologist, He didn't finish. Didn't dare. Brave men finish sentences. Honest ones don't start them. This is late, I said. Your threats are in the wrong time zone. He leaned his forehead against the doorframe, like he wanted proximity without touch. I'm not threatening, he muttered. I'm negotiating with fire. Fire doesn't negotiate, I said. It only consumes. I came to say... He stopped. Say it, I told him. He swallowed. I came to say... I can't do 9. Of all the things he could have said, that small one surprised me most. You just did 3, I said. 9 should be simple. Her lawyer, he whispered. He says don't meet without counsel. He says we should file first. Her lawyer's sharp, I admitted. You should hire one of those. You don't want me to, he said. I want you to find a mirror, I told him. The lawyer can hold it if your hands shake. Silence lingered long enough for the hallway carpet to make its own statement about patience. Then he did something I didn't see coming. He slid down the wall, knees pulled up like a teenager after their name got shredded over the school PA. What happens if I choose A? He asked, voice smaller. You stand in a room and tell a version, I said. I stand up and tell the truth. Evidence stands alone. Trials write songs you don't get to title. Your mother's friends read the papers. Strangers remember you differently. The sale closes without your name anywhere near it. The foundation thrives without you. My voice moves more into paperwork and less into speaking at you. None of that is threat. It's forecast. He let his head thump against the wall gently. You write forecasts now? I always did, I said. Storm advisories, release notes. Same thing. He gave a hollow laugh. You've got a metaphor for everything. I've lived through everything, I answered. Metaphors just show up later. He glanced at the camera. The lens stared back, professional. For a few breaths, we were just two men sharing oxygen on opposite sides of a door. Dad, he said, I'm sorry. He meant it exactly as far as he could carry it. Most people overestimate the distance of their own words. I heard you, I said, granting him that measure and no more. He stood. If we show at 9, will you promise not to call police? You already showed at 3, I replied. That counted as today's mistake. You don't have many left. Heels clicked at the far end of the hall. Laya appeared, moving faster than elegance usually allows. She slowed when she saw him upright. She softened when she saw the camera. Dan, she said gently. Chris, we should go. We should, I answered through the wood. She drew closer than good judgment would suggest. You look exhausted, she told the door. You look rehearsed, I said. Go home. We can fix this, she whispered. And for the first time that night, her tone meant it. We pick B, we'll do therapy. We'll sign. You'll show up, I corrected. Not as children hunting for a new father, but as people willing to become new selves. You'll ache where growth happens. You'll want to quit. You'll decide not to. That's B. And you? Chris asked. I put my phone down when midnight texts arrive, I said. I don't open my door at 3. I stopped confusing my hope with your character. That's my B. For a moment we froze. 3 people, a door, a camera, and a hallway lamp humming like an old idea. Then the elevator bell chimed, sounding like an offer. Laya touched his sleeve. He didn't pull away. Mercy, however small, still counts. He glanced into the peephole one last time, like a child double-checking under an empty bed. Then he nodded. 9, we'll be here at 9. And you'll leave now, I said. He gave the camera a half salute without conviction. They walked toward the elevator, a couple that could be mistaken for beautiful and tired instead of dishonest. The doors shut on their reflections. For once the corridor stayed quiet after a choice. I eased the chair back from the door and sat. The kind of seat you take only after being the most adult person in a building. My phone buzzed. Rachel again. Status, I typed. Tried the door, they left. 9 is confirmed. Her response, copy. Police report is drafted, time-stamped. Filing is your call, not mine. I stared at those 2 words. Your choice. And felt the weight tilt from threat into responsibility. A different kind of danger, but one you can respect. I slipped on shoes and walked to the ice machine. Not for ice, but because sometimes moving your knees is half the work of staying alive. A man in a robe passed, nodding at me like we belonged to the same quiet order. Back in the room, I reopened the letter I'd written, added a line. The line I hadn't earned until a door was tested at 3 a.m. If you want forgiveness, bring a fact. I sealed it again, wrote his name again, so the ink would remember. At 4:15, the city began its morning chorus. The sounds construction crews carry in their bones. I lay down and finally let sleep take me. The kind you get only after making a choice with no audience. It didn't last long. It didn't have to. At 6:42, a soft knock woke me. Housekeeping, doing their job at a kind hour. The day outside already brighter than men my age prefer to admit. I shaved carefully. Speed is when cuts happen. I tied the tie I reserve for meetings where lying isn't allowed. Sent Victor a short message. Meeting at 9, unrelated to transition. All good on our side. His reply landed steady, like a man who always measures twice. Take your time. We're ready. I checked the apartment camera feed. Empty hallway, dignified. The new locks looked self-assured. I looked like a man trying to learn that too. Before leaving, I built one last structure, a folder on my desktop labeled If. Inside the lab report copy, Mr. Riley's signed statement, hallway footage, 3 texts, a handwritten note about 9 p.m., 2 envelopes and 1 short letter. If anything happens to me, deliver this to the right desk and to the buyer. I shared it with Rachel and a quiet contact at Kane Systems, not Victor, so no one could call it theatrics. Call it plumbing again, a different flow. Water finds its way when the pipes are honest. I buckled the watch, the way a man straps time when he wants it to behave. Took the letter, locked the hotel door and tugged it once, just to hear the click like a headline. In the elevator, the mirror kept me company, and I didn't look away. The lobby smelled of coffee that had learned patience. Outside, traffic sorted itself without referees, better than most families manage. I walked to Rachel's office the long way. A small breeze slipped between 2 buildings and lingered there, unbothered. On an unfashionable street, men in orange vests planted a sapling into nameless dirt. One patted the soil with his boot, like he was telling the ground a story. "Good morning," he said to nobody and everyone. "There it is," I answered, lending a hand with the burlap's corner without turning it into a speech. By the time I reached the lobby, my legs had made their case to my heart. Today could be lived without shame. The guard at the desk nodded, the kind of nod they give men who managed some rest. "Not too matter?" the receptionist asked. 9, I said. "They're already here." She tilted her head toward 2 figures seated close, holding the air between them like something fragile. No sunglasses. Both looked like they might take the right pen if offered. I smiled the way I used to before the last round of testing. We can still ship something clean today. It won't rewrite the past, but it could make the next version better. Rachel opened the conference room door. "Ready?" she asked. "Ready," I said. The night hadn't shifted my decision. That was all I wanted from it. 9 a.m. looks different when you've already lived a full day in the dark. Rachel's conference room glowed with the clean light of a place that values paper over spectacle. 2 chairs on each side, monitor at the head, carafe of water no one would touch. "Good morning," Rachel said. She made morning sound like a line drawn, not a welcome. Chris gave a nod. Leah folded her hands on a legal pad, like a prayer she wanted notarized. "We'll keep this straightforward," Rachel said. "We'll review the video, memorialize yesterday's option B and draft a stipulation for access, communication and therapy. If at any point you prefer counsel present, we'll pause." "We're fine," Chris said. The way people say fine when every other costume is already worn thin. The screen lit up. Mr. Riley's footage was sharp. My table, the dance floor. My son's shoulders squared to the moment. We watched without commentary, the right way to let truth earn its keep. Chris leaned forward. Leah forgot how to breathe for 4 minutes, then remembered. When the vial gleamed, small as a lie, twice as sharp, no one spoke. When I stepped back into frame without drinking, there was no applause. When security moved in, Rachel froze the video. "This recording," she said, "is part of a packet that includes a lab report and chain of custody. I don't need your concessions today. I need you to understand option A would have gone fast." Chris gave a single nod, the kind men use when they finally acknowledge the sign they've been pretending wasn't there. "We pick B," he said. He didn't look at Leah first. That's progress, even if lurching. Rachel slid papers forward. "Then we write." The stipulation was short but did heavy work. No entry to my home, no direct money requests. Communication only through counsel. Weekly therapy for 12 months with a provider from a list. Attendance confirmed. No disparagement. No guardianship filings without medical cause. No more midnight door negotiations. The trust's spendthrift clause sat quietly beside it like a chaperone. Distributions at trustee discretion. Health, education, maintenance, support. No pledging. No borrowing. No leverage. "This reads like punishment," Leah said, finding her line. It reads like insulation, Rachel replied. Punishment shouts. Insulation works. I placed a single envelope on the table. Not A, not B. Those belonged where they already lived. This one carried a name written the way you write when you've decided to mean it. For you, I told Chris, something I wrote last night. No instructions. If you open it, you open it. If you don't, you don't. He studied it like it might hand him his identity. He laid a palm on it but kept it closed. Later, he said. Good, I said. Later's an honest time. We signed and initialed. Rachel moving with that lawyer's precision that makes ink feel inevitable. At her line, Liar's pen hesitated, then landed. Whether she keeps these promises better than the ones she breaks with herself, that's no longer my jurisdiction. 2 more points, Rachel said when the last page was flat. 1, Dan has moved all sale proceeds beyond reach, escrow trust foundation. 2, you both acknowledge any future financial contact will come from the trustee, not you. Both nodded, tired in a way that might or might not turn into effort. Again, not my jurisdiction. Chris cleared his throat. I said something stupid at 3, he began carefully. About whispers. I'm sorry. You said several stupid things at 3, I replied. This apology covers one. He nearly smiled, then stopped himself. For once, good instincts. Rachel rose. The meeting ended the way successful surgeries do. No applause. Just breathing. Mr. Riley's statement? Liar asked at the door, tone straining for neutral. On file, Rachel said. So is the restraint. Don't mistake mercy for blindness. In the hallway, they hesitated like tourists unsure of a map. Liar touched his sleeve. He didn't pull away. They left together. I let the door close and felt something I hadn't expected. Not triumph, not even relief. Just the weight of a tool returned to the drawer it belonged in. Rachel stacked the papers into 2 neat piles. What stays? What moves? You've got 1 more call to make. To who? I asked. You tell me. I stared out the window. The city wore its plain face. No plaque for last night. An old friend, I said. Good, she answered. Make it. The friend was older than the company, older than the numbers on a term sheet, older than the watch on my wrist. He was the one who taught me to read hex dumps when they were the only love letters machines could write. He hired me when my resume carried more honesty than evidence. He once told me to go home at 2 a.m. I didn't. He didn't fire me for that. He picked up on the second ring. You sold, he said. In our language, an accusation means congratulations. I did, I said. How are you holding up? He asked, like a door that had finally learned which way it swings. He laughed softly. You were always better with the hinges than the wood. I gave him the version a friend deserves, not the whole blaze, just the heat. He listened the way men of his generation do, when another man hands them a truth that deserves to be carried. What now? He asked. I built a foundation, I said. Small on purpose, Asta. Asta, he repeated softer. He'd met my wife the same night I had. He knew exactly why that name fit. What's it for, he asked. Shade, I said. The kind you don't have to explain to sit under. Send me the number, he said. I've got more money than patience. Thank you, I said, because my wife had taught me what that word costs and what it buys. Dan, he said before we hung up, do the thing your wife always made you do in the worst moments. What thing? Find a tree, stand under it, try to feel small. The clock read 10:30, enough time to obey. I walked northwest without naming streets. The city obliges men who want to arrive someplace. Maps don't advertise. A strip where maintenance was an afterthought. A patch where the grounds crew ran out of budget. A corner where the wind belonged to itself. There a row of young oaks, soil still fresh enough to smell like intent. I stood under one, tried to feel small and succeeded. Grief arrived the way good weather does, unexpected but right. Not the kind that knocks you down. The kind that makes a promise you're finally ready to keep. I remembered my wife in a cheap jacket on a cold morning, pointing to a vacant lot and saying, this could be anything if nobody tries to own it too hard. I remembered a photo of her beside a pot of asters on a windowsill we never stayed long enough to keep. I remembered the letterhead we never designed, because we preferred corners where names didn't matter. A bench nearby carried no plaque. I sat. The air did that everyday miracle, entering, leaving, keeping you alive. My phone buzzed once. A message from Victor. Transition plan updated. We've padded your side by 2 weeks. Family first. Code is patient. There's a grace in a man who trusts your life more than your reputation. Thank you, I typed back and meant both things. A second buzz. A text from a number that wasn't unknown once you heard its tone. Therapy 3:00 p.m. Wednesdays works. Do we tell you? You show up. Your counselor confirms attendance to the trustee. That's it. After a pause, okay, and then the envelope. He'd set it unopened on his desk. Said later. Later is honest. I almost typed that back, but I didn't need to repeat myself. I sat in the quiet until it stopped trying to prove something. A pair of kids kicked a half-flat ball, which is better training than a perfect one. A woman walked a dog who cared nothing for her route. A city worker checked a trash can and moved on. That's what civilization looks like if you squint. People doing necessary things no one thanks them for. I pulled out my old notebook, the analog kind that pretends to be immortal, and wrote 3 grants onto a page. The pantry with a line wrapping the block. The after-school program with laptops that turn into ladders. The crew that plants trees in overlooked places, where benches never get plaques. Beneath that I wrote no galas. If a donation demands a tuxedo, we drafted it wrong. I let the page breathe. I let the day remain what it was. Not a victory parade, not a farewell speech, but the morning after. By early afternoon, I was back in Rachel's office signing one final document. The will that doesn't pretend to be literature. She tucked it into a folder and gave me a copy of the Foundation's E-in, printed on paper trying too hard to look official. You'll need to fill the board seats, she said. Choose people who lean toward verbs, not adjectives. I have 2 in mind, I answered. 1 living, 1 not. She didn't pry. Good attorneys know where silence belongs. Rest, she advised on my way out. That wasn't legal counsel. It was professional wisdom. I'll try, I said, and she nodded. Trying has always counted, I just measured it differently before. Outside, the world had the nerve to keep existing. A bus was inevitably late for someone. A stoplight was inevitably about to flip. I took the long route back to the nameless hotel, checking out by sliding a key to a clerk who didn't need to know me to wish me well. Back home, the new locks did their duty, solid and sure. The apartment smelled like paper that had finally found its use. I placed the watch in the dish by the door and didn't burden its sound with superstition. I set my phone face down on the counter and didn't feel stalked by the silence. I poured a glass of water and let it be nothing more than water. I cracked open a window and let the air argue its case. I stood in the square of light cast on the floor, refusing to move until it shifted shape. Some afternoons that qualifies as wisdom. That evening, an email came from the Foundation's inbox, our first. A modest mailbox in a modest system. Confirming the account and scheduling a meeting next week. I replied with the 3 grants and a note. We're not building statues. We're planting shade. Before sleeping, I pulled out the carbon copy of my letter and read the final line again. The one I wrote because 3 a.m. demanded it. If you want forgiveness, bring a fact. I don't know when he'll read his copy. I only know there will be men in the future who'll need men in the present to have written something real. I turned off lights in rooms I wasn't using, as you do when you realize life offers more square footage than you require. I stood at the window and let the city forget me, which is the finest gift a city can give if you let it. Somewhere a quartet tuned their instruments in a restaurant that had told the truth last night. Somewhere a security captain ended a shift knowing he'd done right. Somewhere a check cleared. Somewhere a tree endured another day without a plaque. I went to bed with the kind of fatigue that doesn't ask for permission. In the dark, my wife's voice visited, the way it always did when I tangled the simple parts. Call it done, Dan, she would tell me. Then go do the next right small thing. So I did. I called it done. Not the love, not the harm, not the work still waiting. Just this part. Then I set an alarm for a sane hour. Because tomorrow I'd take a train to a town with more trees than tails, sit on a nameless bench, and think about a foundation meant to provide shade for people who'll never know my name and never should. It isn't redemption. That's a word for songs. It's something quieter, a life size to fit the morning. If this story spoke to you, leave a like and consider subscribing. You're welcome to drop a comment below, even just a single word. Maybe tell me your location or the time where you are. Sometimes one word is enough to say you are here,